Pokemon Unite tier list, Season 6. The September patch, Theia Sky Ruins, and Mew release. Yeah, a lot is going on in the game, including a massive buff to Mr. Mime, who was already S tier. So it looks like we are bringing back the legendary SS triple plus tier. We have only seen this one time before for the release of Sylveon, who was so busted it needed to be hotfixed. But it turns out having Mr. Mime guard swap, which is now power swap, and then heal without the move upgrade is busted. Also, a lot of other quality of life things like the barrier just going out and stunning people. And the weird thing is, Mr. Mime's early game did get nerfed a little bit. You aren't knocking people up as much because you're not in the fray, just, 1-2 knock up, 1-2 knock up. You do have to wait a little bit of time for that empowered auto attack, but you initiate with it. So it's not quite power neutral, a little bit power negative, but still alright. And then Fake Out doesn't have like the follow-up stun, but if you're just playing good Mr. Mime, if you're playing S tier Mr. Mime, as I've talked about in a lot of other tier lists, and you're just stealing and out-securing everything from the opponent, well, now you scale even harder, and there's nothing the enemy can do about it. Even more nothing, because Power Swap makes it to where your target does less damage to you. So you choose one person, and they don't get to play Pokemon Unite for a couple of seconds because they're dead, and then you choose another person, and they don't get to play Pokemon Unite, and then you use your Unite move, and the entire enemy team doesn't get to play Pokemon Unite. The only issue is that Power Swap Plus is currently bugged, and you can't, like, confusion stun people with it, and other people are saying, like, there's other weird things where if you cast it too fast, sometimes you don't get the stun either. But if that's bugged and it gets bug fixed, then yeah, the second that happens, Mr. Mime's SS triple plus. Psychic is viable now, but I still think Confusion is the better one, but like Psychic actually works, which is cool. And overall, Mr. Mime has gone from S tier to getting a buff into God mode, which brings us to Mew. Now, the tier list hasn't updated with Mew's picture, so that is going to be the stand-in with Clefable. And I feel like the ceiling on Mew is also SS tier, potentially triple plus. As it currently sits, Mew is S. For the most part, when a champion or character launches in the S tier, it is only going to get more powerful as more people understand how to play it. And this is where it kind of comes in, that you can play an S tier Mew by just going Solar Beam, Light Screen, and then not using your synchronized passive at level 5, just because that's how busted Light Screen Solar Beam is. But if you get it to where, like, you're managing cooldowns, you're doing crazy auto attack resets, you're pressing the L stick in the middle of the fight, and then you're changing your abilities to get the cooldowns, resetting cooldowns, getting a takedown, and then changing it back into Light Screen Solar Beam, and then doing all kinds of crazy stuff, Mew is just insane. You also kind of play it like Mr. Mime. You have the strongest level 1 in the game, and then, like, one of the strongest level 3s in the game, because Light Screen, Solar Beam from across the map, like, they don't get to have anything. So you just stay ahead, and then you just keep snowballing. And if you want to get super crazy about it, Mr. Mime, Mew's ceiling is one of the highest in the games. And that was one thing that was keeping Mr. Mime in a low play rate, and a lot of people not understanding how insane Mr. Mime is, because the Pokemon had the highest ceiling in the game, and that ceiling has been lowered because of how free guard swap is now. Like, you get health and durability against your target, or you're also like healing and giga buffing your ally, which was also something Mr. Mime did really well. You get the guard swap plus before the update, and then you just like tether onto a Cinderace or a Glaceon or some kind of carry Pokemon. They're almost immortal, and they're already doing crazy damage, so just buffing that is out of control on a supportive Mr. Mime, who's also a mage carry. Normally, when a ceiling is lowered, the power level is lowered. We saw this with Garchomp. That Garchomp, on release with the level 10 Unite move, was the strongest character in the game, except for maybe Zeraora, because Zeraora got, like, Garchomp's power, but a bit more free. And then they made it level 9, but they reduced the stats, so easier to become Garchomp, weaker when you get there, which is just a nerf to the character in skilled play. So, normally that's something that happens, but with this, they buffed it while lowering the ceiling. So more accessibility, more power, absolute insanity. Let's get on with the rest of the tier list. I've been talking about that, and again, Mew kind of in the same boat, that it's infinite ceiling of move combinations and ability switches, and also just like landing crazy damage and skill shots is only going to get more and more expression, especially as people unlock it for free, and then there's more development on the character, so things are looking really scary. Garchomp, still S tier. Theia Sky Ruins, creating a mix-up that is unknown just yet. So we're probably going to be looking at a tier list next week, if I even care to play the game, because the new map is terrible. It's poopy doo-doo, bad, stupid face. I hate it so much, because it took the simplicity. Like, the beauty of Pokemon Unite was extracting from the simplicity and then having a strategy you could perfect over 10 minutes. Now it's just chaos. And I don't think there's a way of really refining that chaos except in 5s, so the solo experience is also terrible, and even the 5s experience looks like it's not going to be consistent. However, what this has led to is effectively more experience on the map, and even behind teams having a better time scaling, so Garchomp is still going to be in an S tier position because of that, and the more Garchomp can consume, the more it can just demolish opponents. Now, we have seen some other shifts. So Glaceon was S tier, getting an interesting nerf. So now you can't, like, infinitely Ice Shard someone when you use your Night move. It's capped at 12. And to a degree, that doesn't change your ability cooldowns. Because if you're out there throwing, you know, 18 Icicle Spears on one person, your Icicle Spear has come off cooldown by that point, and you're just waiting for it to finish while you're trying to nuke a target. Or, let's say, like, a Snorlax gets in front of them and throws up the block. You're actually just no DPS for longer than you need to be because you're stuck channeling that move even if it's off cooldown. So a weird tuning and like quality of life potential, but what the 12 Icicle Spears mean is that if you lock onto a carry, they're not dead. You can still get KOs and it's still like a crazy amount of damage, but it means that like while the fight is a 4v5 because the person you locked onto has to leave the fight, it's not completely over. They can fall back, they can heal up, they can receive support, or they can like int in, still die, but get more damage. So Glaceon's target is going to be more effective, and you have to be better at weaving your abilities now because you have more access to cooldowns, but you are weaker overall. And that's kind of like the thin line, the razor's edge that you play on S tier sometimes. Sometimes just one little thing that is making you very powerful, and hitting that does knock you out of S tier, but still A+, very powerful, very strong, really, actually, it probably succeeds in a very strange way off Theia Sky Ruins. And this might take some development to get used to, but keep an eye on Glaceon still being S tier, because now there's more Pokemon everywhere, so you're going to have your passive up in like level 6 to 7, 8, or when your Night move is down and you're just wandering around, you're going to have more passive stacks available to you, and you're going to be able to chain those off wild Pokemon, also more Pokemon to farm, more experience to be had, so maybe that offsets it a little bit, or maybe Glaceon was being carried by like just how stupid the one-shots on the Unite move were. Not as strong, but maybe can like work its way back in with a lot more development of your technique and stuff like that. Sylveon still seems S tier. Level 8 Unite move that just completely wins team fights is insane. Being able to tick over to level 4 and then just melt down everything, and now you just have tons of Pokemon to feast on as well with a low cooldown is going to be pretty good for the Sylveon. And that's another thing about Garchomp. As an auto attacker that has like Giga damage and Giga secure and burn and take potential on wild Pokemon once it gets its stacks, being able to hold your stacks longer throughout more of the map and just farm up on more things faster is good for Garchomp. Other Pokemon that just kind of like need to burst out or try to farm in like different ways, they're going to be in a different position. But like Garchomp, Sylveon just winning off of that. Mamoswine still S tier, not double S, triple plus. Whoa, not that's a misclick. But Mamoswine still S tier. If you Icicle Crash someone and then you high horsepower into them and it's more than one person in a team fight, the game's just over. And even though you don't have, like, the main center choke point where, like, Mamoswine... Like, if they're going for Zapdos, and Mamoswine's just gatekeeping the center choke point, you eventually have to run through it. And if you're not unstoppable, you're just a free setup and then kill and, like, multi-kill and multi-stun on the Mamoswine. But even then, one of the strongest laners in the game. You probably need it just to collapse onto Mew. So it's like you go in for the Icicle Crash... Or not Icicle Crash, the Ice Shard tackle. And if you get onto Mew, that thing's just dead. So... using it to counter some of the stronger lanes that are going to be coming up, that's a thing. Trying to harass Mr. Mime at range, that's also going to be powerful. So early game on Mamoswine, still really strong, and then it still has the absurd objective control and one-shotting power onto squishy Pokemon. So now we have Wigglytuff. It got a buff, so you would expect B tier, but it wasn't really that much of a buff. It did not get enough damage. Like, Double Slap needed a 50% damage increase or something for Wigglytuff to have any presence in the game. Didn't happen. it does, yeah, it just doesn't really feel like it's doing as much. Again, because there's also so many more Pokemon that are prominent. Like, Mr. Mime lanes are going to be everywhere. Wigglytuff, while it can get in the way with the cute charm and have, like, some disruption on the Mr. Mime and also the Mamoswine, once that passive's gone, like, you just have no ability to secure against the common securing Pokemon right now. So you're going to keep on falling behind. There's more to, like, stay in the game with experience on the map, but you just didn't get enough damage, and the indicator adjustment for rollout on Wigglytuff, if you're good Wigglytuff, you didn't really need that. You were going to have, like, 95% confidence of where you're going to be rolling out, and it's also mostly, like, up and down and choke points, which have been limited in the new map, so you also don't just have, like, a nasty rollout that's as easy to land. And Wigglytuff didn't really get too much. Buzzwole, even though it got buffed, still B tier. Again, the same issues. Like, it just doesn't have good wild Pokemon secure and take. It can remove people from the game when it Unite moves, and it has, like, all this other stuff. But as a Unite-focused Pokemon, a lot of other Pokemon that do that, and it just kind of, like, can get completely taken out in team fights, and there's just, like, a lot of strength in the game. So, Buzzwole, it just needs more damage on its level 1 and level 3 abilities so it can actually duel and not get suppressed. But if Buzzwole gets ahead, then it's dangerous. But that's kind of the same things we've seen with Venusaur, where Venusaur, the Bulbasaur lane was pretty weak for a while, and then, like, it just started working more. Weird thing about Charmander as well. Like, Charmander just went from, oh, this is the most puntable lane in history, to, why is he dueling me level 3? I just want to take the Audinos, man. How am I getting KO'd here? What? And I think, like, X-Speed metas also are kind of contributing to that, because, like, Charmander just goes, oh, if I have my ally hit you and I X-Speed and run you over, I can kill you before you make it to your goal. And maybe as you're getting your goal shield, but not making it to your citrus berries or something. So, like, the dueling early for Venusaur and Charizard have gotten better, but you still need to get ahead, and it's also still a very easy lane to punish. You get a gank, there's not really much that, like, you get ganked, and there's not much you can do. If you're behind, you really have a hard time getting back in or having any presence in the game. If you're ahead, well, now it's actually very difficult to play into. It's not reliable enough for me to call A tier. Unless you have, like, maybe if you comp it out right, and then, like, you E-Girls into Venusaur, you can still find some success. But now Mew exists. Solar Beam is the best move on Venusaur because of its, like, steal and secure potential. And you start that level 1. So, like, Venusaur doesn't have a place. Charizard, we had Tyranitar being introduced, and Tyranitar just kind of seems like better Charizard because of the Unite move. So Tyranitar kind of feel an A+ on how it can just one-shot execute everything in a team fight, and it didn't really feel like you could do anything about it once it used its Unite move, but it actually just lost half its damage on its Unite move, theoretically, quotation marks, take that with a grain of salt, triple asterisks, because it doesn't crit. And it also got, like, nerfs to its abilities as well. So no more critting on the Unite makes this Pokemon feel like trash to me. Because what made old Tyranitar so oppressive is United Zap, walk up to anyone, one auto for 2,000 damage, second auto for 2,000 damage, third auto, that's just execute. Okay. That's not fair or balanced while also being, like, tanky and impossible to do anything about. So it had, like, better Charizard Unite kind of feel, and then, like, pop-off potential. But for the rest of the game, even, like, as its Larvitar into Pupitar, I think there's really almost any jungle Pokemon that's better to put in its place so it can gank harder and snowball harder. So it doesn't really have any presence from jungle. It just gets lost in lane. It doesn't do anything. It's a Tyranitar. It doesn't do anything. It unites, and now it has a Unite with half the power, maybe 30% less power, but that can still matter quite a bit. And yeah, it's just not as crazy. Espeon getting buffs. The Pokemon is still felt just useless to me, like, probably still one of the lowest win rate Pokemon, probably still just terrible. It didn't need damage buffs because it's already on the fringe of one-shotting people, but the cooldowns and then the weak Unite move, it just, again, it's another Pokemon that doesn't feel like it has any presence, and because of how important presence is in team fights and objectives, and then rolling over and trying to score the winning points at the end of the game, I just can't find a place to put it higher. Like, cool, it will catch you out once in the mid game and then one-shot you, and it kind of felt unfair, but it mostly does that single target, and it can also just, like, be completely useless in a fight. Does its little Unite move, isn't as powerful as you would imagine with something that suspends people the way it does, and then it uses its cooldowns. Everything gets absorbed by Unite Shield and Buddy Barrier and Blissey healing and support and stuff, and then it just does nothing. Now, the nerfs to Unite Shields globally and, like, less presence on Buddy Bear and other Pokemon, like, making themselves more frail out of emblem choices, again, should help Espeon, but then every other special attacking and physical attacking Pokemon makes use of it, so there's just better picks. Gengar, A+ tier, maybe floating into S tier, because now it's, like, reliably getting level 9s. It's also just reliably being like crazy and snowballing, and because people are just wandering around the map like, oh god, there's so much new stuff going on, like, where do I get these points, how do I do it? The objectives are also very important, especially Regieleki. So Gengar comes in with Sludge Bomb Hex, really anywhere, anytime on the map, gets ahead and then stays ahead, and like, oh, you just can't do anything about the Gengar. So I'm actually putting it like, yeah, I think we could have the float from A+ to S, just off of like map mechanics, Pokemon development, and overall crazy strength. But when there's giveth, there's also taketh away. It feels like Aegislash has fallen out of S tier, because even though there's more experience on the map for Aegislash, it wanted to kind of get the easy lead and then just kind of keep rolling with it from there. But now enemy Pokemon, they're going to have more health. The objectives are more split, so it's not like Aegislash shows up to an objective that everyone should be at, burns down Dreadnought, gets ahead, or just kind of like slashes its way through team fights really crazily. Now the fights are more split up, so Aegislash is getting less snowballing kills, less objective presence, kind of weird on like the Rayquaza power as well, and objective burning, and even like the map with all the bushes and the rearranged choke points and everything kind of being in different spots, Aegislash doesn't seem it can make use of that as successfully as it did, so it doesn't even get to exploit the new map, while a lot of other Pokemon are exploiting it. Maybe even falls to A tier, but also because like everyone's playing Mime now, everyone's playing the new buff Pokemon, people are running Mew because they're paying for it and getting it early, and there's like a lot of other changes. Maybe the good Aegislash players, much like the good Cinderace players, just stopped playing that Pokemon, and that's why we're not seeing it be crazy. But it also just kind of seems like, yeah, it has to King Shield in an awkward spot now, you can ignore it more, it doesn't get as hard of a pop-off, the damage just feels less because of the inflated levels in the game, and now it's not doing, like, unkillable, absurd stuff. Or maybe there's still, like, good Aegislash out there, and there's just other better things to play, because everyone wants to play Flavor of the Month or something. Cinderace, I'm still putting at S tier, even though Cinderace's bread and butter was that you just come in with your Unite move from across the map, because you could see Zapdos' health bar from way too far away, and then you steal it, and then you win the game. But even then, like, Cinderace still just has outrageous amounts of power, and it's only going to get stronger. Mr. Mime can, like, tether onto the Cinderace, make it tanky, make it do more damage. Oh no, that's actually terrifying. Push people away on the confusion. Psychic Mr. Mime can keep anything off of the Cinderace. So now Cinderace just has, like, a lot more ways to just have a good time. People still like playing Blissey. Trevenant is A+ tier, very common. Winning the top lottery, because like top's supposed to be 113 now, but that's not going to happen in ranked. So 212, but even then it just takes some not twos. It fully stacks really quick. And now like it's just keeping everyone off of Cinderace while bullying the enemy team for the entire game. So Cinderace, I think, has the opportunity to get more space now. And also, like, it did lose its cheekiness, where playing Find the Cinderace when there's, like, 7 bushes it can be stealing Zapdos from is not a fun time. But even outside of that, I think, like, Cinderace, if you're a proficient AD carry player, you have really good mechanics, you can time cooldowns, and you also just kite like a beast while keeping damage uptime. You're just as successful, and that's going to be good on the Cinderace. Talked about Ninetales in the last one. B tier, just because like it got power crept out. We saw like A+ with Ninetales when it got like the crazy buff on Aurora Veil, but then that got all like nerfed away, and I think it even got double nerfed, and some other weird stuff happened where it's like, it doesn't really do crazy much. But maybe with the map changes, you do want to go Avalanche, and then you can set up other things like Avalanche wall bang with Mr. Mime. All right, we have an A tier combo. We had Snorlax block, like Snorlax Mr. Mime, or not Snorlax Mr. Mime, Snorlax Ninetales lanes, very powerful. If that can still find a way to succeed with all the new spawning mechanics, and you can combo out, you can lock your opponents down, you effectively have like a support with how you're creating the area of less damage, or putting out a lot of stuns, or putting out a lot of like terrain and environment hazards, and then Snorlax just being like a block beast. Put 3 carries next to it. Okay, Mr. Mime, Ninetales, Snorlax, 2 carries. Pretty easy win. So compositionally, they can be A tier. Just throwing them out there, more B tier, harder to play. Snorlax lost a lot of damage on Heavy Slam. it only has Tackle as a gimmick, but now Mr. Mime, Mew, and other Pokemon are kind of taking away Snorlax's lane presence and pressure, and then Ninetales, kind of the same thing, to where it just doesn't do damage. Glaceon's just the better Ninetales if you're talking about caster, auto attacker, hybrid ADC mage. Yeah, like Glaceon's just the special attacking Cinderace. Cinderace is still Cinderace. Glaceon really bullying out Ninetales' potential. Greninja, haven't seen much Greninja. Probably just has a really good time with all the new map and new sneaking around and stuff. So, a lot more places for Greninja to pop out and wreck team fights with the smoke screen. Also, more experience to hoover up. I don't know where the jungle routes are going to be going, but I think it's just good Pokemon. It can still be pretty solid. Zeraora. So, had like Zeraora in A+ tier, maybe S tier after it got the changes, but it's just too squishy, man. Like, it just feels like an A tier Pokemon. It's strong. It can do some cool things. But there's just a lot of Pokemon that are better than it, and I think that's kind of what's suppressing it in the tier list. Blissey getting a significant nerf out of A+ tier. I'm saying, like, Blissey Eldegoss is kind of where the game is at. I think Eldegoss has been secretly sleeper viable, very strong for a long time, but people just don't want to pick it up because playing Eldegoss is not fun. Even though you're a slave on Blissey, you feel like a much more productive slave on Blissey. Don't know how Eldegoss interacts with the new map, but Blissey nerfs kind of make this more competitive. It would be like upper A tier on the Blissey, middling A tier on the Eldegoss, and maybe Eldegoss secretly A+ tier because of all, like, it can contribute while all, like, the weird stuff is happening in fights and objectives and everyone's splitting the map. It's like Eldegoss can just, like, find a buddy, go top with Regieleki. There's, like, a 3v3 skirmish bot over whatever Reggie has spawned. I don't know. And also, yeah, Blissey, like, if you can just burst through it, or you can make it to where the target doesn't get all the soft boil uptime, Blissey's kind of useless. Blissey gets ahead, it's actually, like, scary and unstoppable, but that doesn't happen as much now. Eldegoss, it's just always good. It's always reliable, it's always consistent, and its Unite move is really, really strong. So you can't keep an Eldegoss out of the game. Like, higher floor, lower ceiling, lower floor, higher ceiling, balances out to A tier. That's fair. Sarina getting Stomp nerf. People are saying that Sarina feels awful now. Didn't really seem like that significant of a nerf, but I guess if you're casting it 5 times in a team fight or more, yeah, you actually, that damage is going to add up to a significant amount of health bars, and then one person not getting KO'd means now you're taking more damage. That person's alive when they wouldn't have been. You're not in a 1v1, like, you're not turning a 1v2 into a 1v1 duel and then just winning it. You're still fighting 2 people while being weaker. I think Stomp might be overrated, though. Like, maybe Sarina, like, just looks very powerful. Triple Axel is and has been A+ for a while, and because everyone's an NPC that doesn't understand the game, they just, like, copy what other people are doing, and it's not good. Like we saw with Dive/Cramorant being trash, Dream Eater, Gengar being the worst pick, Stealth Rocks, Crustle, etc. Just all the terrible players not picking and playing correctly. Triple Axel might still be it on A+ tier, and until then, seems A tier. God, there's so many Pokemon in the game now. We've already been through this for so long. I think that covers most of the important Pokemon I kind of wanted to give detailed explanations on, except for Greedent. Greedent's another Pokemon I have very strong thoughts on with the new map. Yeah, you never thought I'd do that, huh? Never thought you'd see the day where Greedent goes from, like, D or B tier to A tier for me. But that's because back in the old map, it was not Greedent's game. If Greedent gets its game, it becomes a very difficult, hard-to-play game, which is why I bumped it into B tier as, like, playing properly. You know, if you're just inting scores and doing stupid stuff and, like, failing invades, Greedent is the most useless Pokemon. It becomes a 4v5. But if you're actually, like, keeping fundamentals and then trying to break down the game into, like, where you need to be, and then you just, like, belch takeover team fights and objectives, yeah, Greedent has those potentials, but once again, very flippy, inconsistent Pokemon. But now, it's got a new map. There's Pokemon everywhere for Greedent to feast on. The enemy jungle buffs are closer to your base now, and there's more routes. You don't have to, like, weird choke point, hope they don't catch you, eject pad out. Like, you just get to covet your way through the entire map, soaking up the enhanced experience and disrupting the opponents. And now, because of the objective split, it's like, oh, Greedent's stealing jungle while we lose 4v5 at first Dreadnought. They take Dreadnought, we're just too far behind. Sure, Greedent is the same level as everyone on the enemy team because he completely griefed it for his own greed. Wow, it's called Greedent. I never put that together. It took me almost a year. But yeah, see, like, Greedent's greedy playstyle did not work. But now, greed seems to be the name of the game with the new map, and this is chaos. This is Greedent's game. Might even be like A+ tier now on you just creating so much havoc and getting so far ahead while everyone else is kind of floating around in the game. And backdooring matters. Like, okay, it isn't you must be at Zapdos. Rayquaza main's like, oh, if you're just backdooring with Greedent, you kind of soak up some other Pokemon and then like you double score for fat stacks. Or you go to the Rayquaza pit, grab all the experience that's on the ground because they had too much, and then you run and score it again. Now it's not like, hey, I wasn't at Zapdos, so we lost 500 points and I scored 100. Now it's Rayquaza's worth maybe 300-ish, and Greedent can become 150 of that by itself on a losing Rayquaza fight. So, yeah, now that you can actually backdoor and do weird things, those Pokemon, or those strategies are going to succeed. I don't advocate for them just yet, but Greedent is the one that exploits it the most, so he's actually kind of spooky right now. Cramorant, A tier, solid mage, solid early game, solid mid game. If it can scale into late, it's good, but Surf Hurricane, too many nerfs. Still feeling the Whirlpool nerf, still feeling the Unite move nerf, still feeling the Surf nerf, but Greedent can just kind of like scoop up camps, move around to objectives, still pick people out, still have good team fight presence. Again, just like a lot of better mages, like damn, Sylveon turns online to level 4 too, and then just has crazy damage and mobility and stuff. Cramorant's squishy little boy. Now maybe if you have a Mew on your team and the Mew's getting targeted instead, nah, that's actually bad because like Cramorant still doesn't have like the output of a Mew or something, but still like solid Pokemon. You just play to win. You just play to get wild Pokemon, play to set your opponents back a little bit, grab some picks, and more of like a utility mage now than just a burst crazy artillery mage. Decidueye, A+ tier maybe, A tier maybe. It kind of gets dove out. The new map creates a lot of weird angles. Some other Pokemon, Theia Sky Ruins is their playground. I don't feel like Decidueye has a playground. Decidueye is just there. Decidueye is just there to become damage, but if it's just getting tricked on by everything else in the game, it's having a hard time. But it can also just snowball and get super far ahead and super hard win duels. Don't know if he's A+ tier. Definitely not B tier anymore or D tier. Just like A tier 80 carry. Let's go. Zoomerl still feels really weak. Maybe because of like all the other shifts, some of the other Pokemon getting upgraded. Like Greedent has escaped D tier, so that puts Zoomerl into D tier. Some other Pokemon just better picks. Why pick a Zoomerl when you have Garchomp in the game, when there's tons of other jungle Pokemon like the Lucario, which is still an A tier Pokemon, A+ tier Pokemon. Especially now with like top lane being made for Lucario on yoinking Natus, fully stacking score, score stacking, getting away for free, jungle's all disrupted, everyone's just having a mess of a time. Power Punch is terrible though. If you play Power Punch, you are trolling. Extreme speed resets on the Natus also just has you online when bees aren't up, and then more things to dash around through on the map, and more presence at objectives. Lucario, at least power neutral through all the changes, while other Pokemon are like getting buffs and nerfs just from the existence of the map. Still a strong Pokemon, still a solid pickup. And I think, again, we are kind of fine thing where it's like the Lucario mains, they were everywhere when Lucario was a giga oppressive, the best Pokemon in the game because its numbers were way too ridiculous, and there was half of a roster. So yeah, like, more people play Lucario. Now there's just so many Pokemon that even if someone wants to main a lesser Pokemon, where they would be a good Lucario or Cinderace main, we just don't see that presence out there, so it's hard to find some of the it gets harder and harder with every new Pokemon and every patch to find the true ceiling of where that Pokemon is. And it also makes it harder for me to play every single Pokemon with enough proficiency to understand how it works. I'm a Mr Mime, Garchomp, and Mamoswine main. That's how I know these Pokemon are S tier. Anyone else saying anything else sucks at the game, that's just a fact. Anyone coming out that's like, oh my god, Mr. Mime is the best Pokemon in the game now, it's so good. Completely fraudulent, no game sense. Mr. Mime's doing the same things. Again, it just gets to do it on a lower ceiling with a bit more power, but Mr. Mime is still taking over. And also, having technically stronger early game on old Mr. Mime, the mains succeeded. Gardevoir, I have no idea where Gardevoir is on this one. Still very powerful. You get a fat Unite move, you land your crazy chunking damage abilities, and you're just having a good time. Inconsistent, frail, got power crept by other overtuned stuff, potentially. I don't know, maybe it's A tier, maybe it's A+ tier, maybe it's actually B tier. but at least it feels like a Pokemon. Very, like, frail and squishy, though. So relegating it to jungle when there's better jungle picks, like the Gengar, like Garchomp, Lucario, Cinderace, the list goes on, Zeraora. I don't know, it's not like you pick jungle Gardevoir and then you just come out 2 levels ahead of everyone and the game is unplayable. That doesn't exist anymore, so A tier. Also, the Unite move changes. That's going to still have, like, some volatility on the tier list and where Pokemon are going and how games are playing out. This feels about right. Blastoise. Squirtle's still kind of weak in lane. Better tanks like Trevenant, Mamoswine out there. Greedent also becoming a better pick. Blastoise still very strong. Mew is just better Blastoise Surf, but Mew doesn't want to use Surf because it's super frail. I don't know, again, better picks, but a strong Pokemon. Pikachu doesn't feel like it's doing anything. Again, like the new lane also kind of making it hard for Pikachu, because if someone's trying to score stack on a Pikachu, Pikachu can't take a wild Pokemon by itself or even with like certain allies and then make up for that difference. So Pikachu is just going to sit there trying to hit someone under its own goal who's just score stacking on it. Pikachu can't do much about it, gets put further and further behind, and then just has less and less presence as the game goes on. It's just not good. And now again, Mew is just a better Pikachu on the Electro Ball, which was kind of the thing about Pikachu. Absol, probably back in B tier. You know, because of Regieleki, more people are going top. So it's not like, oh, Absol just completely gives up on its team, takes Rotom 2 or 3 times in a row, drills all the top lanes, and hits level 15 before anyone else, and then just prays to RNGesus that something happens. Even that Absol playstyle was pretty terrible and lacking game sense, but it could still, like, win in snowball games. Crit Runes got nerfed. Absol got nerfed in the last patch. It's more RNG reliant. That's just not good for the Pokemon. But again, I think there's still, like, A tier, you go Fluffy Tail, you use your Unite on the objectives, and you use that to keep up and keep ahead. You still kind of vanish in team fights, you still kind of lose that presence, but as the team fights get more split, with more people going in different directions and more things kind of getting scattered, maybe Absol finds a couple more opportunities as a Cerebral player, but overall, like, Absol as a Pokemon, mid. As perfected play, maybe ceilings at A tier. Dragonite just got nerfed, but not really, but kind of, but wasn't good to begin with. Pokemon World showed us that Cinderace is the better pick on objectives. Objective priority going down, bad for Dragonite, but more Pokemon on the map and more ways to experience scale into Dragonite to get through your weakness as a Dratini and Dragonair. Balances that out a bit. Pokemon numbers are weird, so also adjusting to the new, like, wild Pokemon, health bars, and objectives. That's a thing. Another big change that I kind of talked about earlier, I've talked about in my other videos, while the Theia Sky Ruins map sucks, is not being able to see the enemy health bar. Nerf to Dragonite. You can't just Unite move at the perfect time from half the map away. You have to be in range. I guess that preserves Unite move charge, but that takes away a big gimmick of Dragonite. However, bailing out of the Rayquaza fight when it's lost and then uniting to the enemy goal to make up for some of the points, that's a better play now. Maybe it also wants to unite to its... Also can unite to its own goal and now stop some of the scoring potential, depending on, like, how the enemy team is coordinating. At least it's not insta-score. There is counterplay to Rayquaza. So I feel like Dragonite getting some buff feels, getting some nerf feels, power neutral overall. Slowbro, D tier. Laning is more impactful than ever with all the Pokemon all over the place, and Slowbro can't do much for that. Every other tank is better. Crustle, A tier on X-Scissor, A tier on skirmishing, and trying to stop score stacking, and then scaling, and then you hit level 6 in a pretty good breakpoint, and then you just X-Scissor everything down, and you win the game. So, Crustle, also backdooring as well. Like, I wonder if a Crustle Greedent, just those two Pokemon can win the game by themselves by just moving around the map in such erratic ways, because... yeah, objectives don't have, like, that, oh, you weren't at first Dreadnought, you lose the game. You weren't at first Reggie, you lose the game kind of feel. So now, maybe score shenanigans actually play off these Pokemon. Oh god, I think I just realized why I might hate the new map subconsciously, because Score Shield could be viable. So it's, again, like, everything is just chaos now, and it's not growing pains. It's not, oh, no one knows what to do now. No, the game, like, the map was deliberately designed. You can see from the devs. They wanted to make it to where you can't just rehearse 10 minutes, do everything right, and then just win through skill in that kind of way. They made it more like Super Smash Bros. Brawl and Smash 4. It's more party game, less competitive strategy based, especially in solo queue. But even then, like, you can still cheese yourself through weird 5v5 stuff. So maybe, yeah, like, you just go Gradient Crustal, Score Shield, and you just drill scores the entire time, and that actually matters now because there's so much more experience and scores on the map. The objectives don't really matter as much, especially if you're trading. Like, cool, Regieleki breaks a goal, but if Gradient or Crustal roll up to bot or even top and then trade the goal, Regieleki didn't accomplish anything. And just the way these Pokemon troll around and disrupt the game, again, it's a disruptive map now. You don't get to play fundamentals. You don't get to play Honest Pokemon Unite. And that's why the map is not good for competitive integrity, so that's kind of crazy. Talonflame, A tier on objective secure, A tier on team fights, never pick Brave Bird. Refer to my video where I said here's how I calculate team diff in Pokemon Unite. However, I also had another thought that in response to all this frustrating stuff, what made it frustrating on Remote Stadium is that it felt like there really wasn't too much counterplay to it. But now the counterplay is, well, you can also soak up a lot of points and then counter score, because again, everything has been thrown into chaos. But I still think there's like weird successes that kind of open it up. And I guess now you just play greedy. You play greedy, you sacrifice all fundamentals, you treat Pokemon Unite like the least serious game ever made, and maybe that's the secret to Theia Sky Ruins. It's not having integrity, it's the friends we made along the way. Hoopa's still S tier. Hoopa is the best S tier Pokemon, and probably the best Pokemon in the game, just because, again, League of Legends, teleport problems. Hoopa diff ends the game. I don't think the new map changes any of that. Also, because of like all the objectives and all the cross mapping and stuff, more score zone control, probably just better on Hoopa. I haven't seen it as much. It's also kind of weird to play in like solos. But even then, like, okay, the enemy team gets Rayquaza. Since they're not insta-scoring, they are losing a couple of those seconds. So that old strat where it's like, oh, Hoopa just backdoors, unites in the enemy base, and then it's a 500 trade for the Zapdos 500 trade, and then they still win the game. I think that's going to happen more now than ever on Theia Sky Ruins, and that's scary because also it seems like bases are getting broken up and more because people are backdooring. It's not even like the team that's behind can open up the center goal outside the base on the enemy team, even while behind, because again, there's so much experience and so many ways you can trade in the game. So with that, like, Hoopa just goes, okay, we don't need Rayquaza to score because you're going to be scoring while I'm scoring, and it's not instant and there's no counterplay. And now we just flip the map. It just seems like, in a weird way, the devs don't want players to engage with each other because that can be frustrating to get skill issued. So they just want you to go to the other half of the map and live there and then just break goals down. I don't know. That kind of happened with, like, immediately after the Zapdos changes, but then it went away after the Buddy Bear changes. Duraludon, A tier, very strong. Maybe A+ tier on very, very skilled play, completely taking over. Like, if you pocket a Mr Mime as a Duraludon, you're A+ tier. There's not much the enemy team can do about you. You have good zone control, you can really disrupt fights, and you can just really melt down anyone. So its DPS is out of control. But it's also frail, also got a nerfed, maybe high A tier. Something. Machamp getting nerfed, also no crits, or not no crits, but less crits. Kind of falling off anyway. Like, Machamp got Flavor of the Month, showed to be very powerful, but then when people are like, okay, now I'm getting more used to Machamp, it lost a lot of, like, the surprise factor of being A+ tier. So now, A tier, Delphox, A tier. That was a long video. Hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe.